Norway isn't known as a hotspot for racing, but thanks to iRacing making Rudskogen a part of the base content, it's certainly garnering a few fans. However, this track was made for lower-powered vehicles, so the Lotus could wind up as a real bull in a proverbial china shop. Who can tiptoe their way through this place? We'll find out soon as we get ready to watch round 4 of the Lotus 49 Grand Prix Legends Series, and you'll see it all live here on the Global Sim Racing channel. Hi, I'm Joe Peak, and with me in the booth is Rouse Racing driver Joey Atterbury. Behind the scenes is our director Daniel Costello, and he's using cameras provided by Dougie Beard. You can be forgiven if you've never heard of this place before, so let's head down to our track guide for an introduction. Welcome to Rudskogen Motor Center. Located about an hour and a half south of Norway's capital of Oslo, the southerly placement allows for a much longer racing season than you'd expect in a Scandinavian country. At just over 2 miles, or 3¼ kilometers in length, the 14-turn track makes for a perfect lower to mid-level racing circuit. A nice amount of elevation change and some truly picturesque scenery makes it not hard on the eyes for fans, but retains a delicious amount of challenges for drivers. There's of course the obvious places for passes, such as into the sharp chicane of turns 1 and 2. But in spite of the long downhill stretch into 3, it's way too fast of a corner to try and overtake unless you're seriously brave. 7 and 8 include a frustrating triple apex sequence that rises, drops, and then rises again, all within what effectively becomes a single corner. There's also the tricky combination of 13 swift entry, then a seemingly never-ending final right-hander to dump you onto the main straight. With it being part of iRacing's base content, drivers are likely to get plenty familiar with this track, and they'll need to thanks to the very technical layout. But overall, it's easy to see why this is a popular destination for all Norwegian motorsports fans. Certainly is some beautiful scenery up here in the north, or at least north compared for the rest of us, but the south of Norway, interestingly, Joey.
And this is a small circuit here, 14 turns, 2.022 miles in length, 3.25 kilometers, and it looks like a normal road race circuit with a straightaway, a couple S sections, some hairpins, some passing opportunities. But what is to note is that this place is small. You don't really have very many chances to get up on the top end speed, so it is a very technical circuit. The other thing about this place, there is a lot of elevation that goes on, specifically in the first half of the track. So turn 1 off of the front straightaway, a decent passing opportunity, but really it's heading down into turn 3 and 4. That's where we're going to see a lot of those dives downhill on the brakes. And then out of turn number 4, that long sweeping right-hander, you feed into an S section, but once again, everything is relatively slow speed. And when we talk about slow speed in these Lotus 49s, it's more tiptoeing around the racetrack, being gentle with the steering input, being gentle with the throttle input, and most of all, keeping it pointed the right direction, because you can get too happy with that accelerator and spin this thing around.
Certainly, and it doesn't like the low revs either on top of things, but seems like the revs are up for Jorge Nieva because he's currently leading the championship again. He's over Togo Hisada, who had a bad finish last time out at Monza. Jorge taking the win has bumped him up by about 10 points. Seb Tixier sitting back there also with a bad finish. That's always kind of the crapshoot of a round there at Monza combined. Leo Sequeiro doing a pretty decent job. We've seen him kind of hanging about lately. Could he be a sort of snag for our regular competitors, becoming another face up at the top of the points? Is also David Rossi doing impressively well. Another former F2 champion finding himself rising to the top now of the F1. Speaking of which, why don't we take a look at that F2 standings?
It is Mats Linden currently leading the way, 12 points over Michael Grissinger. And then similar to the F1 standings, look at how close it really tightens up there. Second place, only 5 points back to Bruno there in third place, 3 points separating him from Jordan. Then only a single point between fourth and fifth of Roberto Pangrazzi back there. So it is still early days of this season. Jim Matson, Jan Steffen, Kirk Clapper, all of these drivers, they're not too far out of it, and there's still a whole ton of rounds to go.
They also keep track of a Nations Cup in this series, and it's Spain and Japan leading the way on this one. But Singapore, mostly being contributed by Seb Tixier, has once again found themselves pretty high up there and only about 4 points ahead of the UK, which is definitely a regular face here in the Cup of Nations, with the US kind of trailing behind, trying to keep up. But don't count out places like Denmark and Italy, especially with Nick Kaki there. The Italian has been doing quite well as they're tied with the Netherlands, Lithuania, and Germany going to round out all of our top 10 in this category. Let's go through the race details in case we have any new viewers as well, Joey.
Round 4 of 12 here today. I mentioned these cars and drivers are just getting rolling in that championship. 24 laps is what everybody is going to have to do, and it is an open setup as always, so that means the drivers can tweak and tune on these cars. If it doesn't turn as much, well, guess what? You can make those adjustments. Do everything that you need to get up to speed. No spare car. That means if you run into any of your buddies out there or a wall, well, guess what? You're going to have to live with that damage on the track or come down to pit road and get that fixed up. But that's a time penalty right there. Disqualification at 25 and a drive-through penalty at 17 incident points. Now, here at Rudskogen, there is plenty of area to run off the track, but it is a busy track today. I see well over 35 drivers out there. It is all going to be not tangling your wheels with all of your friends on the same playground.
No doubt lap traffic will be a serious issue pretty early in the race, I would imagine, with it only being about a minute 21 around here. And no surprises, Andreas Valenteus has taken the pole. Togo Hisada next to him on that front row. I mentioned Nick Kaki. Well, he's sitting in third, and he is behind Togo by less than a tenth of a second. So it's looking tight as Nieves managed to put himself into the 5th position. And there he is on screen now. He's already finished his 2 laps, so he's essentially just getting a little more warm-up in.
And I think what's impressive as I look at that timing pylon, Joe, is that Valenteus, a 21.5, that is a smoking lap compared to everybody else. And then pretty much from 5th place on back, a 122.0 out of Jorge Nieva. You got to go all the way back to, 16th place to find a car that is slower than 122.
Whew. Sandeep Banerjee, glad to see him back pretty regularly now. 2nd lap, going to promote him up to 20th. Nicely done for him as he'll take some of that extra runoff at turn 1. As now we focus on David French. 1st lap did not count for him. He's through one of the slower portions here through 7, 8, and into 9.
Have to count on you for all of these visual references because quite honestly, I don't know this track very well out here, and these cars, they suit it, I think, okay. I think more in terms of size they fit on here, but in terms of the motor, Joe, maybe not so much.
No, it is difficult through here because it is just very little time full throttle. I'd be curious because we don't have those sorts of stats on percentage that is full throttle, but it would be fascinating to see how little time you can actually get that foot down in this car. As the Australian comes across the line, does this one count? Yes, it does. It's a 24.6. It'll be good enough for 30th, so he jumps up a few places.
And as we watch the final seconds of qualifying round down here, this is Kurt Clapper on the racetrack. He did qualify a couple weeks ago. It doesn't look like he's going to qualify this time, just probably putting in a little bit of practice. But you mentioned that data to see how much, drivers were lifting and how much they were on the gas. I wonder if Seb Tixier is logged in and might be able to provide us a little bit of that insight for us today.
That's a good point. Yeah, we'll have to ask him if we get to talk to him. Although he had mentioned the slowdowns here in the text chat are quite a problem. And he says, drink a shot every time someone gets a slowdown. And multiple drivers said, I'd be already drunk, unfortunately. So it is going to be tricky. And it looks like the qualifying is done. So Andreas Valenteus has taken himself another pole. Can he convert that into a win is the question. Togo Hisada will start from 2nd, and Nick Kaki is going to be starting in 3rd. Then it's Seb Tixier P4, Jorge Nieva 5th, and Xavier Sanchez on the outside of that 3rd row. Istok Vreco is back. He'll start from P7. He's got John Olsen to his outside, Leo Sequeiro 9th, and Kevin Verbruggen will round out your top 10.
On row number 6, it'll be Bill Tyler and Marco Antonio Lopez Salgado. Gary Ho in 13th with Glenn Becker in 14th. David Rossi starting 15th. Bob Woodhouse in 16th. Nicholas Hontke in 17th. Alan Bertou in 18th. Michael Grissinger 19th. And Sandy Banerjee in 20th.
Then it's Jim Matson starting 21st today. Robert Plumley in P22, as Jan Steven will be 23rd. Cam Porter down in 24th, as Dylan Walker will be the inside of the next row 25th. Mats Linden starts in P26. Bjorn Ackerman will start from 27th today. He'll be followed by Thomas Willerhausen in 28th. Then it's Doug Cloud and David French on row 15.
Across the page is Jonathan Jordan in 31st. Matthew Nelson 32nd. Mauro Micheletti in 33rd, Michael Marcuson in 34th, Jason Clapper 35th, Kurt Clapper 36th, Eros Ermeni in 37th, and a couple more here, David Tomoski and Tim Porter rounding out the 39 cars.
Whew. There is going to be plenty to keep everybody busy at this rocky circuit. And as they are lined up on the grid, ready to go, we should have them starting momentarily. Just a couple cars left to grid up. As you can see, pretty cool temperatures, despite it being right smack dab in the middle of the afternoon here at 12:30. So drivers will need some time to get those tires up to temp, and a bit of wind too, between about 15 to 20 miles an hour that it's been hovering during this time. Looks like the drivers are ready to go as the lights come up and the green flag is out. It's going to be a sharp left-right into this first turn, very reminiscent of Montreal. So can they manage to get through? Because it looks like some of the drivers didn't even get across the start-finish line. It looks like Audrius is going to take the lead and not relinquish that to Hisada. Meanwhile, the rest of them managed to pick their way past the chicane.
There was a car that never even got going inside of the top 10 on the starting grid, so I wonder who that is as we go down the hill for the first time. Watching Tixier and I believe this is Jorge Nieva battling over 4th and 5th, and you see how long that double apex right-hander is, and now you start to climb up out of the hill into the S section.
Michael Marcuson, unfortunately, also spun out at the first corner as we got another car spinning in the middle of the field in the back. John Olson, gets collected off screen, unfortunately. And I think Robert Plumley going to be the victim that winds up running into him as we check out Gary Ho fighting in the mid-pack here, trying to creep into the top 10 out of the hairpin.
Climb your way up out of that little hole there, put your foot to the floor, but not for too long because these corners come one after another out here. Going to be coming up to, this is 13, and then the long right-hander known as turn 14, the final turn on this racetrack, complete the first lap.
Never liked those more than 180-degree corners, and that last one can be frustrating, but Gary Ho does well, although he's a little under threat from Salgado coming up to the first turn. Just goes slightly defensive. They'll stay in order.
Really do have a top 5 breakaway. It has been Estaf Greco that leads the second pack here. Gary Ho still in this battle for what is 11th, 12th, and 13th place on the racetrack. And I think this is the cool section right here. You really come down this hill and you got to get on the brakes, but it is not a straight braking zone. You see it constantly feeds to the right. You have to be on top of the car.
Yeah, it is difficult coming into there. Nieva still sitting in 5th where he gridded up on this one, so having to wait for a chance to pass. It's going to be tough to come by. I imagine it'll be mostly waiting for mistakes from the other drivers, Joey.
I feel like watching this track and these cars go around, it's a bit like watching maybe kart racing going around where everybody's right next to each other. They're all waiting for that opportunity. They're all able to pounce, but just the track, it's so tight, it's so small. You have to get up there even further to pressure somebody into that mistake.
So I did get an update from Leo Sequeiro as we take a look at a replay. His pedals went out right at the start. This is from onboard David Rossi, and he's the one that unfortunately gets left hanging out to dry as he did not see the stopped car.
Really unfortunate there, just didn't even get to turn number 1 before he had that incident, and that's one of the problems with the standing starts, and sometimes everybody goes, sometimes people have issues. It works just kind of like the real world too, huh?
Exactly, and definitely no anti-stall in these cars, unfortunately. But we come over to Berteau now, fighting for 14th. That's Bob Woodhouse just in front of him as it tightens up here out of this long sweeping right-hander, and then it'll climb steeply uphill through the S's.
Jump over all of these apex curbs, try to shorten this track as much as you can, and you see the 17 really getting to the inside of the 6 here. I think that's going to be the key to making all of these passes all day long, because you can't run down the straightaway to outbrake somebody. It's going to be how tight can you keep the nose at apex, how much can you force somebody off of the racing line, and then start to do those over-unders.
Holy cow, we got 3 wide coming down to the hairpin. Dylan Walker, Bjorn Ackerman, Jan Steven all fighting for position down into 12. Round the outside for Walker, but he's going to get fed out. Just not enough grip there. Now he's got to try and defend from Ackerman, who's going to have the inside for the first part of the final turn and then the outside for the long right-hander.
I tell you what, it stacked up everybody right behind too. So not only is it Dylan Walker and Stefan, and then you saw the big save out of Ackerman out of the final corner. That's not going to do anything in terms of speed. That's Micheletti looking down the inside now, but Ackerman was able to defend it into 1.
Boy, big train starting to form. Clapper at the back of it. They've got Nelson. You mentioned Micheletti in there too. 6 cars all stacked up, trying to see if they can overtake Steven up at the front of it. They're going to come down into 3 and 4 once again. And as they get the cars woed up, nobody able to really do anything. But in front of them, Doug Cloud in a right tussle with Michael Grissinger. I think Grissinger is going to lose out.
Yeah, Grissinger's kind of the one right ahead right now. It's Doug Cloud in that number 19. And then you saw the 27 finally close the door on corner exit. And not sure who that was. I think it might have been the 29 having a huge wag at the tail coming out of that corner. Joe, you mentioned the low revs, the low speed, just these cars, they don't like it. And we've already seen so many drivers happy with their right foot, and there goes another one.
And that is going to be Grissinger, who spins out coming out of the left-hander. That is a tricky one. It's a curved braking zone up over a crest into there. Meanwhile, Togo Hisada just took the fastest lap of the race as we check in on Bill Tyler fighting with Hankey.
This is for what is 9th, 10th, and 11th place here, so there's a little bit of a gap up until kind of that first gaggle of cars, so call this kind of the third breakaway here. Bill Tyler is the 3rd car in line, currently chasing that number 15 of Hankey right in front of him, and then that's Kevin Verbruggen leading this train, and Kevin did an awesome job last season, especially in that F2 Points Championship, and out here with that number 22 plate running inside the top 10.
Definitely a great run there for Kevin. That number on the car is determined by your iRating when you log into these races. So, yeah, he is punching above his weight class right now. And we come down to Berteau once again, side by side through the hairpin. He's going to come out ahead. And this is a fight with Bob Woodhouse, who still rocks up right behind him, ready to try and pick that spot back if he gets one little slip up from Allen.
And you had mentioned this car that we're riding on board with Alan Berteau in the number 17. So he's already up 4 positions after he got by Woodhouse out there. And it's only about a 1.5 seconds back from Salgado. You see him just up the road. I'll have to keep an eye on that 17, see if he's able to claw in that deficit.
Greco on Seb Tixier. Seb not able to dominate like we've seen him do before here. He's still sitting in 5th. In fact, he's lost 1 position from the start since Nieva has managed to overtake him, and he's under threat from Vreco now.
What I'm curious, Joe, about the kind of shape of this race, I look at the top 5 and they're decently spread out right now, which is something that we don't see usually in the 49s. We also have the shortest racetrack, or one of the shortest racetracks that we're going to see here. I bet you lap traffic is going to come into a serious play here later in this race.
I saw Jason Clapper lose a spot there. That was to Mauro Micheletti, managing to sneak by down the hill into the plunge. So, but Clapper's still having a good race, though. He is up 14. Tim Porter behind him up 16. So, fantastic race for the Netscape car.
Well, Well, and I know that Micheletti and Clapper are kind of arguing over that position, but Micheletti is up 13 positions himself. So I think that entire group that's arguing over 20th position, they're on their way forward as we jump back up. This is the battle for what is about 10th place. It involves 4 cars led by Bill Tyler. Then you got Glenn Becker, Gary Ho, Marco Antonio Lopez Salgado. That is the caboose on the train.
Yep, and they're very close to one another, pretty much nose to tail as they come out of that long right-hander of turn 2 and plunging down the hill. Who can maximize this entry as they try to widen it? You can see them staying all the way out to that curve and then ducking it back in as it compresses at the bottom, but everybody stays in line. Becker taking a bit of a different line than his rivals here up into the S's.
I think Glenn Becker's looking for a little bit of a way around Bill Tyler, so he's going to try to keep moving forward, but Bill always one of the fastest drivers out here. Glenn, no slouch himself, and then you see Salgado just once again roasting those rear tires off of the thing. You might be able to get away with it now, and it might not seem so harmful, but we're on lap 7. Once it's lap 14, it'll be a little bit worse. Lap 20 will be even worse than that.
Exactly. They may be harder tires, but you can overheat them in this car. I think we may have had a problem with Cam Porter moments ago as we check out our leader, Audrius Valenteus. To his credit, for Togo Hisada, he's only let him get away by about a second. So Audrius cannot make any major mistakes here.
I actually think, Joe, that the top 3 has closed in just a little bit, and that includes Cocky there in 3rd place. So you're right. Valenteus is not running away with it. Togo Hisada is right there. I always make the comment that Togo learns throughout the race. He has different phases, you know, depending on which lap he's in. And right now, this is the meat and potatoes section, as I call it in the race. I think that this is when Togo Hisada really is the student, and then the last third, all of a sudden, he shines.
Tends to be a trend with him. Coming back to Hankey now here in 9th place, looking to the inside and managing to get underneath for Bruggen. I don't know how. That was a smooth move.
Really nice job just taking away the apex. So now we're going to see if he can run away from Kevin Verbruggen. There's a big gap between him and 7th place as we come up, and this is pretty much an execution of what we just saw, except Vreco sliding up the number 10 car.
Yeah, tried to make a pass and couldn't manage to keep it ahead of Seb Tixier, so Seb going to move back into 5th. This is definitely unusual from what we've seen for Seb. He seems a little uncomfortable at this track.
Now, I'm going to make assumptions here, Joe. Now, Tixier is always one of the fastest drivers, right? Winning races up front. But we also know him to be one of the more aggressive drivers, especially on the brake pedal. I wonder if just smooth is fast around this place with how slow it is, and maybe he got caught out once or twice earlier in the race.
Could be. I know he's complained about those slowdown penalties. Maybe he's leaving a bit of extra margin, too, that he just is worried about losing them by taking a bit too much curb somewhere as we come back to Hisada now, and it is cut down 4/10 to Audrius.
Definitely closing down that gap. So what was over a second and a half a handful of laps ago is now down to under a half a second. And you see the number 4 car actually have a few little differing lines. I really do feel like Togo has learned back there, and now we're going to see if he can go up there and pass Valenteus. But remember, we haven't even seen the lap traffic yet. We haven't even reached halfway. I have a feeling we're about to see the whole second face of this race appear.
And, you know, we often talk about the Lotus 79s in terms of setups that come into play, but we don't often talk about it over here. I wonder if Togo, with these cool temperatures, has one that wasn't as strong at first, but now is really coming to form.
That's another great point, you know, especially if you've got a baseline and you go somewhere and you're like, oh man, you know, I really just feel like it doesn't give me the speed that I need. But if you just make a few simple changes, all of a sudden you've got what can work for you. And then all of a sudden in the middle of the race car gets real fast.
That's Tom Tomaski in front of them, and he's checking up our leader. He's going to pull out of the way, but this helped out Togo Hisada immensely. Now he is right on the gearbox. You can see just how close he is. This is a potential place you could sneak by down to the hairpin, but I don't know if he's near enough this time, and in fact, he does not even stick his nose out, but surely if he gets a good run somewhere, he's going to give it a go.
So this is the set of corners that we saw Vreco and Tixier try to slide up the inside, and you see Togo Hisada not try to do any sort of move quite yet. I think that he realized he's got to be so much closer than what a usual circuit provides you. We just don't have those braking zone opportunities, so I have a feeling a lot of these passes, it's going to come from that over-under slicing down to that apex.
You get into a GT3 car and 155 miles an hour sounds like you're cooking pretty hard. Well, that's how quick they get at the end of the front straight in these cars. And these cars, that's not exactly impressive speeds, as they tend to sometimes get up to 190, 200 at some of the longer straights. But Verbruggen, down here in ninth, is still working on Handke after he overtook him earlier on in the race, but he can't make any ill-fated moves because Bill Tyler, Glenn Becker, Gary Ho are all waiting in the wings to pick him off.
And honestly, I'd be a little bit worried if I was Handke out front, because it was only a 5-second gap up to that 7th place when he made that pass, but now it is up to 7.5 seconds. So it might be that Verbruggen was actually pulling him along a little bit, and now that Handke's out front, he's just stacking up the train.
Well, that's Nico's prerogative if he wants to be in this position, and right now he's holding it down well. He knows track position here is king. So as we check out Glenn Becker with his VR setup, and this is one we don't get very often, it looks like his heart rate.
So, Joe, looking at that heart rate, can you tell where the race started? Because I can.
You want to walk us through that?
Well, I mean, you can see kind of the first half of the graph, right? Everything is calm and cool and collected, and then as you get onto pre-grid, right, everything starts to rise up a little bit, and then right below that calorie count, right about 540, that's where I assume the green flag happened on that uprise on that hill. After the first lap, you get to take a little bit of a breath, and then all of a sudden you're locked into a battle, and then you see the heart rate solid ever since then, because look, he is in the middle of a battle. He's got to look in front, trying to make a pass. He's got to worry about the cars behind, and right now, Valenteus has really got to worry about that car behind, because Togo Hisada is right on him, and there goes Togo Hisada around.
Oh, no. He's trying to get it turned around. He's looking for an opening, but he's going to have to put it in reverse. Nope, he's going to find one eventually and get it on its way, but not before he falls to 7th. For Seb Tixier and Jorge Nieva, this is a great moment for them. They get to overtake him in points, and Jorge gets promoted onto the podium.
Just 2 weeks in a row for Togo Hisada, just not having the performance on the racetrack that he wanted. And unfortunately, that car that we were just riding on board with, giving us all the cool telemetry, looks like Glenn Becker has also dropped out.
That looks to be a connection issue. I went back and checked. His car just disappeared, unfortunately. But a regular for us is this man, Seb Tixier. We're now with 3 camera angles to show us here. Letting us see the steering wheel, the pedals, as well as where he's looking in that VR headset. He is 1 position off the podium, but almost 2 seconds away from Jorge Nieva. He's going to have to pick up the pace, especially now that he no longer has pressure from behind.
And this was the view that I was really curious about going into it, and specifically through this section of the racetrack. Now, look at those green and red lines on the bottom left of Tixier's feed there. That is your throttle and brake input. And look, he's never 100% throttle through here, not even 50% throttle, just slow little inputs trying to make sure the car is underneath him. Still not even 50% throttle here. Slowly feeding it in. There's 100% with the upshift, but once again, you're immediately back on the brakes. So that is exactly what we were talking about earlier, Joe. The 100% throttle time around this place, not very much.
I'm going to wager maybe only 40% around here, if that they can get that pedal all the way down to the floor. But as the Singapore driver tries to play catch up here in the second half of the race now. It is still Valenteus who leads Koki instead down there in P2, who has a second and a half to make up to get up to the lead. Not sure if he's got the pace like Togo seemed to at this stage. You know, I was thinking as we were watching Glenn Becker with that feed that he was giving us, I need to tell my doctor next time they tell me I need some cardio. It's like, okay, I'll just sim race more.
Yeah, you know, just give them the data sheet, right? It'd be like, look, I burned this much, my heart rate was up here, and they'd be like, oh, okay, yeah, no, I can see that. As we're watching Tixier here in 4th place, he's starting to have a few of his buddies join up on the back end. That includes Istok Vreco as well as Xavier Sanchez. Now, they're not pressuring Tixier all over the place, but this is the part of the track, or I should say, part of the race that we're starting to get that lap traffic. So I feel like things can either stretch out or compress up here.
And Becker sandwiched between Salgado and Tyler, coming around the long left-hander there. Almost 3 apexes around that corner that you have to try and hit before it opens up briefly, and then again downhill into a heavy braking zone at the hairpin. Tyler doing a good job, although he spins the tires a little bit up on the way out.
I think it's just something that all of the drivers are going to have to live with, and it's managing it, right? You can't not spin the tires with how much horsepower these cars have and how little grip they have around the slow speed stuff, but it is up to each driver to manage that wheel spin. The less wheel spin and tire scrub you have, the faster you go forward.
On board with Jordan, now just behind the car of Mats Linden. This is for 26th position. Big slide coming off of there from Mats, who gathers it up, gets it off the left-hand side to try and line up the hairpin, and then tucks it down to the apex. They've also got David French in behind them. Linden is the only one in this trio that is still where he started. Both Jordan and French up a couple positions.
Go down through this middle section of the racetrack here, and then through the final corner, this long turn number 14. Joe, you were making the comment that anything over 180 degrees is too long. This one is almost a full 270 degrees, almost 3/4 of a circle, that final turn.
Which is, again, the sort of stuff I loathe in the car, but hopefully it's fun for other drivers around here. But Doug Cloud, a little bit farther up the road, trying to fight for 23rd with Matthew Nelson just in front of him. Nelson a little bit more timid on the brakes, but he's able to find the apex better.
It's so tricky going down the hill there to manage all of it. Uh-oh, this is Gary Ho. Remember, he was locked in that battle there, that 3-car battle, so he has gone around. He's going to fall down to 13th place. I don't see any damage on the car, so he might have got away with one, maybe just a hurt ego.
Yeah, hopefully we can get a replay, because he came very close to Bill Tyler, and Salgado did an amazing job avoiding that spinning car. But now he's got a good shot at trying to see if he can pass Tyler too, get 2 spots very quickly to crack himself into the top 10.
Just got to give chase to that number 9 right in front of him, and without Gary Ho in the middle, he has that opportunity, but you got to claw in that gap first. You can't go lunging all the way back, especially like a track like this where you just, the brake markers, they're not that long, and so you got to be right up next to somebody.
If you notice some of these rocks all around that look very cool in the sim, that was actually developed with a bit of new technology that iRacing did when they built this. As we got a replay, I believe, of that incident with Gary Ho. This is coming into my favorite corner.
So we're going to see him go up the inside of this white car, and Bill Tyler does leave enough room, but just a little bit too much speed for the number 12 of Gary Ho, and around he goes. But Joe, I'm with you. A great job by that number 12 car not to go smashing into the side of Bill Tyler.
Exactly, just very heads up in the moment. Coming over to Dylan Walker, that's Micheletti ahead of him. Micheletti up 15 spots. This has been a fantastic race from that number 21 car. Is currently leading Walker, not by much though. You can see, whoa, how close he is, and he's off the apex, coming down into the left-hander. Walker not able to capitalize it, and he is going to have to sit behind, staying patient once again as they try to get the run off the final corner just behind them. Grissinger versus Kurt Clapper as well.
Now, this is the two pairs of them going down the front straightaway here. Walker did get around Micheletti there, so move Dylan Walker up into 18th place as see the number 34 exit pit lane. That's Jim Maxson getting back on the racetrack, letting the battle get on through there. So looks like this is kind of hold station 2 by 2 as they get around that lapped car, headed down the hill once again into turn number 3. Keeping that nose nice and tidy, because if you lose that front end, it is so difficult to get it turned back into turn 4.
Yeah, Walker having a pretty good race, up 7 now into that 18th spot as we check back in with Mats Linden, and that lapped car that came out, or no, that's Tomaski. That's a different car that's trying to let them all through. This is looking interesting. This is a difficult place to try and overtake those sorts of cars. Mats Linden going to have to sit patiently and hope that Willerhausen does not find his way by.
There's a couple names in here that I don't recognize too much from the 49s between Willerhausen, Micheletti, and a few others, and I love seeing everybody come out here to the 49s, especially on such a track that isn't as well known. And here comes a move down the inside. That was the number 28 getting by that 37 car, so looks like trying to finally get by that lapped car is what was going on.
Just behind them, Jourdain had a big slide. I think he's going to lose the spot to David French. There he is now. Thankfully did not hit anything, as there's a whole lot of grass and gravel there to the inside of that 270-degree turn. Let's go back to Michael Grissinger, though. Kurt Clapper and he have swapped places through 1 and 2.
So it is now Kurt Clapper giving chase to Michael Grissinger up here as they go down into 3 and 4. Start to climb up out of the hill here, up into this very, very tedious, slow S section where we were watching Tixier go through, just never 100% on the throttle. You got to manage all of those steering inputs to keep the car underneath you and in control.
Not a lot happening at the front, although this battle for 8th position for Bruggen is on the back of Handke. We've seen Nikos have quite a race here, up 9 spots. He's made a few passes. How is he on defense, though?
Still Verbruggen right on the back, and Handke is out a little bit wide there in turn number 3, but was able to slow it down enough for the important apex of turn number 4, so he got the car tightened back up. But I do feel like Verbruggen versus Handke is going to be going on for not only the last handful of laps, but these two are very, very similar in pace overall today.
Absolutely. He's had him behind him for quite a bit of time at this stage, but they've left behind most of the others that were with them, interestingly. Nicely done for the number 15 car so far. Just needs to keep it together for the last little bit. This onboard definitely shows you just how much elevation change there is throughout this track. So many blind turns.
We don't need to go anywhere. I'd love to keep watching for Bruggen right on the back of Handke, but something I'm noticing, Joe, Togo Hisada is slowly starting to close it in on Xavier Sanchez. It's about 1.8 seconds right now, but he has taken about a half a second out per lap in that gap.
And remember, he needs to try to minimize the damage here because Nieva is our points leader, already up by 10, and he's behind him by a couple positions. So he's already going to be losing out. He's just trying to lose fewer out there. As I believe Sepp Tixier also with the potential to overtake him, only 3 points behind him coming into this race.
Still just trying to claw back any points or any time on the racetrack, depending on who you're talking about. So Verbruggen still right on the back of Handke, and like you said, Togo Hisada still managing that gap, trying to salvage whatever championship points he can out of today's round.
From what we've seen in seasons past, it definitely, every race will count. It sometimes comes down to the smallest of margins here in this series. Other times it's a bit of a blowout. Some drivers really dominating from time to time. My goodness, Salgado really putting the pressure on here and trying his best to get by Bill Tyler, but Tyler's having none of it.
Remember, it was Gary Ho trying to get around Bill Tyler earlier, and he wasn't able to do it. something that I've always noticed about that number 9 is he leaves racing room, right? He left room for Gary Ho, and guess what? If Salgado gets up there, he's going to leave room, but he is going to race you fair and square, kind of like the Ryan Newman. Like, he'll leave you room, but you're still going to have to make the pass. He's not just going to pull over.
Absolutely. 4 more laps to try and do so. So the clock is ticking for Marco to try and get this one done as they plunge down into the double right-hander once again. Let the car track out. Got to be careful about those slowdown penalties. Like we said, you can see the line marking the edge of the track just behind them. Brito has caught up with Gary Ho with his little spin, so he is not out of the woods. He's still got a fight on his hands.
I can report that Kevin Verbruggen just had a slowdown in turn number 3. So, Joe, you were mentioned Tixier and those slowdowns and having to kind of avoid them. As Togo Asada is just trying to keep it on the racetrack, he has officially caught Sanchez, that number 5 car. But speaking of those slowdowns, it looks like turn number 3 definitely reaches out and grabs some people, especially if you go too hot into that brake zone.
I'm sure it is supremely tempting because you've got all that paved runoff and you want to try and open it up as much as you can. It tightens as it goes. So it'll be easy to see drivers push that a little too far. And let's see what Togo does this time through there. He likes to push the limits as that Sanchez in front of them. They've also got a train of lap cars that are battling for position. So this fight is about to get very, very interesting.
And you saw Sanchez put his car 3/4 of the way outside that line there on turn number 3. So he was still inside, but look at the line difference between Hesada and Sanchez. I really see that Togo's car, the front end, way more hooked up. He can point the front end wherever he needs to, while Sanchez maybe doesn't have a car that's turning as good as he wants it to. But either way, they're going to have to deal with lap traffic right in front of him.
And there's zero aero that you can adjust on these cars, if you couldn't tell. So that is all down to driver style and setup. And the setup just down to those springs, down to the differential on the car that they'll tweak a lot in these machines as they're going to try to get to the inside of Jourdain, who stays out of the way but compromises the exit of Togo.
Yeah, you nailed it right there. Just Togo got choked up after he really ran it wide through the final corner trying to set something up. So now they are both free of that lap traffic. However, something that to notice, 2 laps to go here. The laps have clicked away really fast.
Hasn't really been much of a fight for Valenteus. He had a threat from Hesada early on, but when Hesada made his mistake, Adrius has been smooth sailing since. This man, Jorge Nieva, I mean, just doing the thing that he does. He racks up those good finishes, those top 5s and those podiums. Doesn't have very many wins, although they're becoming more numerous, as we can attest to from last week. And Nieva, I think, is going to be sitting pretty after this round.
And of course, these drivers that we're talking about always want to go out there and win, right? And every single one of them is capable of winning. However, when I look at today in this Rudskogen round, if I'm Nieva, I'm probably pretty happy right now. Valenteus has ran away out front, but look at how spread out the entire top 6, top 7 is. I think that this is a great performance from really all of the top 3.
Yeah, Nieva's got, I believe it says 3 wins so far, so that should have been his 3rd one from last time out. Nicola Kaki still seeing what he can do with this traffic to try and pick himself up as we're on to the final lap now for Valenteus, taking that white flag with 3 seconds between Nicola and Adrius. I'm pretty sure that's just a bridge too far.
Our leader, Valenteus, already coming up the hill out of turn number 5. So Togo Hesada, this is his opportunity. Can he slide down the inside of Sanchez? He's got the nose there, but just not quite close enough on the track position. If anything's going to come out of it, it's going to be through the 7 and 8 complex right here at the end of the S's.
Ooh, he took a big look coming at the end of it there, but there was just no room at the end. Don't want to spin Zabir. He's a very popular streamer, goes by Heiki360. And right now he's trying not to do a 360 out on the track, but A 270 to wrap it up for the number 1 car, finishing P1 here today, as Valenteus is going to go Grand Prix Legend Series.
Nicely done from that number 1 car, and behind him will be Nikola Kaki in second place, with Jorge Nieva rounding out the podium. And I can report to you that Sanchez managed to hold off Hisada.
Should be proud of himself on that one. Togo, with now multiple championships to his name, is one to fear if you see him rock up in your mirrors. What about Rudskogen? Nicely done with a top 10. He couldn't pass Nikos, but he still did a great job, at least going up a position from the start. Nikos up 9 spots to finish in that P8. Ahead of him is Salgado, will get 11th.
Watch the rest of these cars as they come down and complete through this final lap here. This is Michael Grissinger currently chasing Dylan Walker. And remember, we were covering this battle a little bit earlier. It was Walker that got up around, and now it's Michael Grissinger with only a few corners remaining, trying to steal away that 18th back.
This is going to be tough from out of here. He'll need a phenomenal exit off the corner, and for Walker to maybe make a bit of a slip up just like that as the car slides wide, but it's not enough. He gathers it up in time, and Dylan will be able to take 18th. Certainly gave Michael a brief hope for a moment.
I think you saw the wiggle out of the car there on the straightaway, saying, oh, I was able to hang on to it. Thank the Lord. And looks like Cam Porter is going to come across, and that's pretty much going to do it for everybody out on track.
Indeed, all of our drivers finishing the complete laps of this race means that it's time for a quick break. We'll come back with the unofficial results as well as driver interviews, so stick around. welcome back to Rudskogen. We just saw Andreas Valenteus take the win in round 4 here of the Grand Prix Legends Series. This tiny little track kept everybody working the entire time. Nikola Kaki gets promoted up into second after Hisada has an error, and Nieva finds himself with another podium to his name. As Seb Tixier finishes 4th today, just didn't seem to have the pace that we tend to see out of him. Istok Vreco was P5. Then it was Xavier Sanchez who wound up getting 6, and Togo Hisada was pressuring him at the end. Togo only able to finish 7th today when he spun himself out with an ill-fated move. Nikos Handke was in 8th, up from 17th as Kevin Verbruggen finished 9th, and Bill Tyler rounds out your top 10.
And in 11th, we have Marco Antonio Lopez Salgado. 12th is Gary Ho. 13th is Alan Berteau. 14th, Bob Woodhouse. Sandy Banerjee rounds out the top 15 here. Our biggest mover was Jason Clapper. No surprise. However, it has been a little while since we've seen Jason be the biggest mover, finishing 16th, up 19 spots. Bjorn Ackerman with a great day himself, finishing 17th, up 10 positions. Dylan Walker, also a big mover, up 7, finished 18th. Michael Grissinger, 19th. And Mauro Micheletti finishes 20th, up 13 himself.
21st is going to go to Kurt Clapper as Cam Porter finishes 22nd. Last car on the lead lap. No surprise that a lot of cars get lapped in this one at only 2 miles in length. Doug Cloud in 23rd, Nelson 24th, and Mats Linden 25th. And you got to Thomas Willerhausen in at the 26th spot. Jourdain up a bit here to finish 27th, although he had a spin late in the race. And then David French, the last one lap down, 28th. Tomaski 29th, and Robert Plumley rounds out your top 30. May have been actually the last driver to actually finish. I think Madsen got back out on track, but everybody behind him many laps down, unfortunately, in today's event. Had a number of issues early in the race that probably collected a lot of them. So let's take a quick chat then with our second place finisher, Nikola Kaki, who had a pretty good run today, just couldn't seem to keep up with Valenteus, but did a good job managing the race considering he was only 3.5 seconds behind. Nikola, it looked like this is a tough one to try and keep up with those quick guys.
Yeah. Hi, guys. Yeah, I can tell you it's very tough. It's very tough because I feel that I'm still have to learn something, and because I feel I'm sliding a little bit too much, so I get a little bit overheated tires, and once they overheat, it's very slidey everywhere, and I need to be really, be really smooth. Doesn't allow the car to do anything then goes on rails, which is pretty hard to me because I like that kind of slidey, power sliding everywhere driving style, but it's not fast at all. So I have to focus and change my mind on that.
Yeah, I can imagine that is going to lose you a lot of time around a place like this with how technical it is. I saw a bit of a mix from the drivers in the chat post-race about some saying this isn't a good place for this car. How do you feel? Would you like to see it come back considering its base content?
Well, I don't really care about his base content or not. It's a pretty small track, which usually doesn't fit very much with this kind of car because this car is like an animal, so it needs space to be fast and everything. But it's very technical, and I kind of like technical track in general. But I think this track is a little bit too hard to overtake. Actually, you don't have like a very clear spot, and overtaking here can be very dangerous. And so yeah, I will not be upset if returns this track, but it's surely not one of the best.
Well, the bad news is we've got sort of more of the same at Oran Park. How do you fare usually down in Australia at the now defunct track?
Oh, this is a very hard question for me because I don't even know which track it is. So maybe I never raced there. It doesn't ring a bell now that you say Oran Park, but Yeah, I honestly, this was my first time racing on this track as well. So I had to learn it from scratch. And so, you know, it's something that sometimes you have to do. And to be honest with you, my break was so long that I almost have always to relearn every single track I race on anyway.
Well, hopefully you'll get some practice in on that one. It's not often used, and it's one of the few figure 8 circuits that you can race here on iRacing. Congratulations, though, on a second place.
Okay, thank you guys. Thanks a lot. Next time. Bye-bye.
That was Nicola Kaki there, finishing P2, followed up by Jorge Nieva. I believe Joey has caught up with our other podium finisher.
Mr. Nieva, congratulations on another podium here this season. How was the race overall for you?
It was hard. It was a really hard race because I didn't have the pace for a third place today, and Seb had a little mistake. Togo had that spin, so I was there, and I had to keep that position, but I didn't know if I could make it. But well, finally I didn't make any mistakes, so here I am.
Absolutely. It was a great result today. You know, I think that the top 5 were really spread out. Now, this track is very different from what the 49s usually race on. What is your opinion on both the track and this style of racing where it's very small and tight?
Sorry. I don't mind the track, especially. I like driving everywhere. I like driving here. I like driving at Monza. I just love this car. So it's nothing that I care about. It's a track like other.
Well, that's a good opinion to have of it, right? You're an equal opportunity track driver out there, Mr. Nieva, and looking forward to the rest of the 3 quarters of the season. Your goal is obviously the championship again. You're up front now.
No, sorry, Joe. No, my goal isn't the championship because Audrius is here. So my goal is second or third place on the championship.
Well, we'll watch you, and I've got my fingers crossed over here for you. And before I let you go, is there anybody that you want to give a shout out to?
Well, I like to thank my wife for all her support because she always watches me race. She wasn't at home today, but I think she could enjoy my podium, so that's for her.
Well, that is awesome, and Jorge Nieva, always one of the biggest characters that comes out here and races with us, and as you heard here, he's aiming for the podium in the championship, but I'm going to be keeping an eye on that top step for him. Driver of the number 2 today, coming home in 3rd place, Joe.
I believe he's been on the podium for the points at the end of the season a couple times. I'll have to double check on the stats, but a man that has definitely been the top of the points a few times, Seb Dixie, unfortunately only managed 4th here today. And Seb, you were saying coming into this race that the slowdowns could be quite difficult to try and avoid here. Did you get any this time? Seb, do you have a copy?
Can't hear you.
It sounds like we might not have Seb with us.
I can now. Sorry.
There we go. Now we've got Seb with us. A 4th place today, and you'd mentioned the slowdown penalties being very difficult to avoid. Did you get any in the race today?
Yeah, I think I made a mistake, and then I got a slowdown just after the mistake. But I don't think that's why Jorge passed me. It was just a mistake. And then I got another one in front of, I don't remember his name, the guy quite behind me. And yeah, I did something that is forbidden in the driving sporting code, which is I totally took my slowdown penalty on the racing line and blocking all I could. Yeah, I have no shame on that. Sorry.
You got to do what you got to do. But the other thing that intrigues us, we always love having your telemetry, but today it was even more fascinating. We were kind of wondering, does it track the percentage per lap that you're full throttle? Because we were kind of trying to figure out how little you could get full throttle around this place.
I'm using CMAP, so it just shows the trace and the minimum speed and maximum speed on each corner, I think. So I don't know that, but yeah, the percentage is very, very slow. Yeah, you know, I have a passion for this track, which is a great hate.
That took a turn I did not expect. So fourth place, you weren't able to stay ahead of Jorge, but you managed to take points over Togo. I'm sure you're glad to see the other side, but are you satisfied with that fourth place? Is this kind of minimize the damage kind of thing for you?
Yeah, totally. Jorge, I don't know. I have to kidnap Jorge and torture him to know how he gets every time such a good start. Because I had a very slow, very short gear, and I didn't manage to get a good start as he had. So I had to fight him, and then I get my mistake, and then I couldn't push. I was like, the only thing on my mind was, don't cut, do not cut. And if I was hearing the guy saying, they say you cut the cars, please slow down, I was going to United for sure.
Someone's going to have to clip that and make that a new spotters pack, saying it that way. Hopefully you'll get a Rallyco driver that can tell you don't cut in a nicer way at some point. And we look forward to seeing you at Portimao next week.
Yes, thanks.
All right, well, that was our fourth place finisher there, Seb Tixier. And it sounds like, we will talk to one more, as I think Joey has caught up with Cam Porter.
Cam Porter finishing 22nd today, although it seems like he could have been up a few more. Talk us through lap 1 and all of the chaos you managed to avoid, first of all.
Well, that was a crazy opening lap for sure. There were cars directly in front of me, mind you, crashing. Just it seemed like every corner. So by the end of lap 1, I'd made up, 8 spots or something like that. So that was a great opening lap for me. It was bad for a lot of other people. But I ran in 16th position for quite some time with Sandeep behind me, and then unfortunately he dive bombed me into one of the hairpins and punted me off the track, unfortunately. So that was really frustrating. I was a little bit worked up and spun myself because I wasn't able to keep my cool. But after that, it was just trying to mitigate my losses.
Well, always love having you out here. My last question for you today, we asked everybody else, what did you think about the track? I kind of referred to it as a little bit go-kart like a rental kart track out here. What was your opinion of racing on it?
I like the challenge of this track, especially in this car. It's obviously the guys were complaining about having passing zones. I think there are a couple passing zones. If you're patient, you can eventually set up a pass if someone makes a tiny mistake. Unfortunately, if you're racing at the front, guys don't make many mistakes, that's for sure. But I enjoy racing this track. I usually have pretty good luck here, and I have fun at Rudskogen.
Well, Cam, congratulations on the 22nd place, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks, Joey. See you guys.
That was Cam Porter, driver of the 24 car today, Joe.
That's going to wrap us up. So we want to give a big thank you to the Lotus 49 community for bringing us back for another season of coverage, as well as a thanks to the team today, Daniel, Joey, and Dougie. Make sure to check out our social media, our website, and our merchandise store. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss a moment here on GSRC. Next race, I know we said Oran Park. We got a correction on that. It is actually Portimao, so that got changed up on us. That'll be Saturday, April 13th at 9:30 a.m. Eastern. A much more wide open track, but a very new track that drivers will still have to learn. Be sure to check out our other broadcasts that we have listed, because up next, IMSA Vintage is going to a classic at Spa. That'll be at 1 p.m. Eastern. Until next time, though, race clean, race hard. We'll see you on the track.